Hello and welcome to the Street Crime UK YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Today we look at two men who were stabbed more than 40 times by gangsters dressed as police officers before their bodies were tied up and dumped into a van and a car to be disposed of. Arba Fesco, 30, and Shlekum Paja, 36, were brutally murdered during an attempted kidnapping outside an address in Cortlandt Avenue, Edgware, on the evening of December 18th, 2019. Organised crime group leader Besnik Berisha and his head henchman Kaziku Tuwizana, 33, appeared at the Old Bailey on Friday the 16th of July to be sentenced for 2 counts of murder. The court heard how Mr. Paja and Mr. Berisha had known each other for around 3 years prior to the incident. In the last year, though, their friendship became strained, believed to be the result of Mr. Berisha owing Mr. Paja around £15,000. Mr. Paja and his 2 killers all had a past of organised crime, the court was told. On December the 18th, 2019, Mr. Paja became concerned when Mr. Berisha was planning something behind his back. However, the next day, Mr. Berisha got in touch with Mr. Paja to say he was ready to pay back the money he owed in full, much to the surprise of Mr. Paja. Later that day, Mr. Paja went to the Cortlandt Avenue, close to where he lived in North London, with a friend of the family, Arba Fesco, the cousin of his wife. Mr. Berisha, who owned a distinctive white Peugeot van, had met Mr. Tuwizana earlier that afternoon. The Old Bailey heard that the pair travelled to the Highbury area, where they entered several hardware shops and purchased items such as lighter fluid, disposable gloves and clothing. Shortly after 7 PM, CCTV captured the Peugeot van outside Highbury and Islington station. From there, the van travelled to Cortlandt Avenue, along with other members of the gang. The group were dressed as police officers in order to ward off members of the public, and armed with tasers, cable ties and knives. The court heard how the initial plan was to kidnap and possibly torture Mr. Paja, but things were not going as planned. Shortly after 8 PM, 2 witnesses were making their way along the road when they saw a group of men appearing to attack another man, and further along the street, another man was seen to have collapsed. The police attended, but the suspects had fled by the time officers had arrived at the scene. The court heard how Mr. Arba was stabbed repeatedly in his back, but the group chased after and pinned down Mr. Paja. Mr. Paja was then stabbed 28 times across his body, but the majority of the wounds were to his chest, as the attackers were targeting his heart and lungs, the court heard. Their bodies were subsequently tied up and dumped into the boot of a car and van to be disposed of, alongside any evidence in the vehicles. Although officers did discover Mr. Paja's blood, along with both his and Mr. Arba's mobile phones. Recovered items included cable ties, a knife and an empty knife sheath also recovered from the crime scene. The knife was later found to be linked to Mr. Tuwizana and the sheath to Mr. Berisha. Following the killings, police received a call from a restaurant on the A1. Mr. Tuwizana had gone into the venue, having suffered a stab wound to the arm during the attack. Mr. Tuwizana claimed to have been trying to intervene in a fight before being attacked and bundled into a black Mercedes car and dumped outside the restaurant. The car, which was abandoned outside, was searched and the body of Mr. Arba was also found inside. Mr. Tuwizana was arrested and then taken to hospital. Meanwhile, Mr. Berisha was attempting to dispose of Mr. Paja's body in a hedge in Radlett, Hertfordshire. Mr. Berisha was arrested on December the 23rd after CCTV analysis led police to the disposal site. Mr. Berisha had claimed to have sold the van a day prior to the murders, but this was found out to be a lie, and when the vehicle was recovered on December the 30th, Mr. Paja's blood was found inside the van. Passing sentence, Judge John Hillen said the pair had shown not one jot of remorse throughout the trial process. The judge added, "The quiet streets of this country are not to be used for lawless exacting of revenge for criminals. Neither of you have shown one jot of remorse or compassion, obsessed with trying to save your own skin. Who was believed to be double-crossing whom, we do not know, unless you decide to tell the truth. Such is the shadowy and murky world of serious organised crime. Death was simply your goal. There could be no reason for leaving your victims alive, once restrained and kidnapped, to report what you had done or to exact revenge. Something went wrong, perhaps unexpected resistance, which led you to resort to using the knives you were carrying and bringing the plan forward. Mr. Berisha of Murtock Gardens of Barnet was jailed for life with a minimum term of 33 years. Mr. Tuwizana, with no fixed abode, was jailed for life with a minimum term of 31 years. In a victim impact statement, Mr. Paja's wife, Rizerta Paja, told the court that the trauma of the incident is unbearable and broke down crying in the witness box. So what do you think of Mr. Berisha and Mr. Tuwizana, and how they had pulled off a premeditated murder against Mr. Fesco and Mr. Paja, brutally and mercilessly taking their lives through what could only be described as pure hatred after stabbing them consecutively 40 times? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.